Okay, so now let me proceed on to HTTP as well as HTTPS. Now, HTTP as well as HTTPS are two primary protocols, for that are used for web communication, and these two protocols they operate at the application layer, which is the seventh layer of the OSI model, right? And they define how data is transmitted between clients or web browsers as well as servers, right? So HTTP is a hypertext transfer protocol, and HTTPS is hypertext transfer protocol secure, right? So let me just start with HTTP. Now, HTTP, as I've said, is a hypertext transfer protocol, and so what it's an application layer because it operates at the seventh layer of the OSI model that is used for transferring hypertext. By hypertext, I'm referring to images, I'm referring to web pages, files, or audios, videos, etc. Right? So it's used for transferring such hypertext over the internet. Now, HTTP is basically what it defines all responses between the client and the server. It defines the format of responses as well as requests that are coming that are flowing in between the client as well as the server, and they also define how those same requests as well as responses are transmitted between the web browser as well as the server, right? So now HTTP can be characterized in certain ways, such as it being a stateless protocol. That simply means it doesn't maintain any state of previous request. That is to say that each request that is coming from the client or from the web browser is considered independent, and the server does not remember the previous request from the client, right? So let's say in a web page, let's say a web page is loading each image as well as each file or video, whatever. They are requested separately, and there isn't any memory of previous request by the server, right? So it is a stateless protocol that's typical, HTTP, and it is also a client server model, which means that the client, which is usually the web browser or an app, right? The client usually sends a request to the server, and the server has to respond to those requests with with the status code as well as the requested web content, right? So it is a client server model, right? It is also a text-based protocol, and that simply means that all the requests and responses between the client and the server, how human readable can be understood by anyone, right? And it uses headers as well as body in order to convey metadata and as well as data, right? So that's that would be the way in which HTTP is characterized as, or what HTTP is known for, right? It's stateless protocol, client server model, and it is also text based, right? Now it uses several methods, which are also called verbs, right? And these methods are typically used to describe the action that is to be performed on a particular resource that is on the server, right? So you have several HTTP methods, which are also known as verbs, right? So these HTTP methods vary from the get method, the post method. There's also put method, the delete method, the head method, as well as the patch method. Now the get method is a method that is used to retrieve data from a server, like web page, images, files, and so on. And then the post method or post HTML method is a method that is used to submit data onto a server, right? Like submitting a form It could be uploading a file, an image, video, posting on social media. It doesn't matter, right? Uh, the other HTTP method is the put method. Now, the put method is essentially used to update or create resources onto a server. You can update resources in a server using the put method. Then there's a delete method, which is used to remove resources from a server. And then there's a head method that is used to retrieve headers only, except the body, right? And then the patch method finally is it's a method, or it describes the action of applying partial modifications on a particular resource, right? So let's say a get method that let's say the browser retrieves the home page from a server. So you would the browser would use the get method, right? And in order to submit, let's say, form the onto the server, it would use the post method, right? So it has those various or typical methods in which describe several actions that can be performed on a particular resource that belongs in a server, right? There is also HTTP, status code, because remember, it is a client server model, and the server responds, with to those requests from the client using status code as well as the the requested content. Now, they respond with the status code in order to indicate the result of the requested content, right? And there are several status codes that are used by HTML, no, HTTP, right? So we have 200 status code 200, which would mean that okay, the request was successful. There is status code 301, which would mean that moved permanently, or the resource has been moved permanently. It has been moved onto a new URL. There is also code 404 that would mean that the resource is not found or does not exist on a server, right? And the other status code is status code of 500, right? Which would indicate that there is an internal server error, or there is a server problem. Then the other status code um, of HTTP is 403. 403 simply means request is forbidden or access denied, right? So those are the typical HTTP status codes, right? And then there's also HTTPS. HTTPS, like I said, it's the hypertext transfer protocol secure, and this HTTPS protocol is actually built upon the first protocol, HTTP. So it's built over HTTP through encryption, like SSL with TSL encryption that provides encrypted as well as secure communication between the client as well as the server. So what this protocol HTTPS is, or what it brings onto the table, is that it actually ensures or guarantees confidentiality of transmitted data between the client and the server, or between Alice and Bob. It ensures data integrity of data of transmitted data between the client and the server, and it also ensures authentication of the transmitted data between Alice and Bob, which in this case would be the client as well as the server, right? So HTTP uses several security mechanisms. One I've already mentioned is the SSL with TLS encryption that encrypts all data that is transmitted between the client and the server, which also prevents eavesdropping as well as any interception of transmitted data, right? So HTTP, that's the first security mechanism, SSL or TLS encryption. The second type of security mechanism employed by HTTPS is digital certificates. Right now, these digital certificates are usually issued by certificate authorities or CAs, right? And they're intended to verify the authenticity of a web page or of a website, as well as its public key, right? So if were to consider a website like https colon forward slash www.google.com, right? The browser would first validate or verify or check the certificate before initiating, or establishing a secure connection, right? So that's the second type of security mechanism used by HTTPS digital certificates. And other security mechanisms include, asymmetric encryption as well as symmetric encryption for secure communication. Now, asymmetric communication uses, both public as well as private keys for the handshake or to initiate a secure connection or session, right? It's as well as symmetric encryption is intended, for the actual data transfer between, the server and the client, right? And it's actually faster, right? So those are the typical security mechanisms of HTTPS, namely the SSL with TLS encryption, digital certificates, asymmetric encryption, symmetric encryption as well, right? So HTTPS, what it does is when you compare actually the features of HTTP versus HTT no HTTP versus HTTPS in terms of encryption as well as authentication and data integrity, the port that is used as well as the security level. Now, when it comes to HTTP, encryption doesn't use any encryption mechanism. It also doesn't use any um, authentication mechanism as well, and data integrity is not guaranteed, right? Whereas on the other hand, HTTPS uses SSL with TLS encryption. It also for authentication it uses digital certificates. So authentication is basically certificate based through trusted servers, right? And data integrity when it comes to HTTPS is actually can be guaranteed uh, through encryption as well as MAC or media access control, right? And the port that is used by HTTP is 80, whereas HTTPS uses the port 443, right? And when it comes to the security level between HTTP and HTTP has a very low security level, whereas HTTPS has a very high security level because of the encryption mechanisms that it uses, right, compared to HTTP, right? So, what would an HTTP connection process look like, right? Um, First, the client would initiate a connection or secure connection to the server using HTTP as colon forward slash. So the client first of all, initiates the connection to the server, and the server what it does is actually is to present a digital certificate to in order to validate or verify or for the client to verify the authenticity of the web page which has been requested, right? And then after presenting that digital certificate, then the client needs to verify this certificate through a trusted server. It must not be, expired. It should also match, the domain name as well. And then after that, there is a handshake or the SSL TLS handshake in order to establish the session keys, namely their public as well as private keys. Then from there, there is encrypted communication between Alice and Bob, or the client and the server, using those session keys, right? So HTTP is very critical because It protects sensitive data like passwords, credit card info, addresses, and various kinds of sensitive data. It protects them. It also prevents things like man in the middle attacks, and also ensures data integrity, or prevents any tampering or play around, or deletion or alteration or modification of data. Right. I'll stop it there. See you on the next one on Border Gateway Protocol, which is actually the biggest protocol on or the biggest routing protocol that the internet uses, because it's used by the big boys, the big players in the world, right? So this is a very important protocol that I'm going to deal with next. See you next time.